episode of the Self-Made Podcast. This is not a solo episode. I am so freaking excited. I have my friend Caitlyn Miller on this episode, and you guys, she's an icon. She's a marathon runner, she's a coach, she's a business owner, she does it all. She's my inspo in running, and I'm so excited to just pick her brain, ask her all the questions that I've been wondering, and I know you guys are too. So Caitlyn, if you want to say hi and kind of introduce yourself, give us the rundown. Who are you? What's your history? Everything.
Yes. Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for
Yes.
having me.
Thank you for coming on. I was just so excited.
Yeah, my name is Caitlyn. I'm 25 years old. I'm a business owner. I own my own activewear company. I do online run coaching. I have my own run coaching business. And then I also do social media content creation full time. But yeah, I'm a marathon runner. I'm very into hybrid training. And I just love health and wellness. I love running. And yeah, I'm excited
I
to
love
be
it.
here.
Yeah, you do it all. It's just so crazy because it's like I know what it takes to run and commit to running. So it's like that's like a time commitment in itself, and the fact that you can run your own business, also do social media. It's like 3 full-time jobs that you're handling all on your own, which is just like mind-blowing. Like that just is so impressive to me because once you're in it, you really understand like the commitment and like the sacrifices it takes to like be successful, and you're like so successful in every area. Like it's honestly so inspiring. So I guess I wanted to ask, what kind of like led you into becoming a runner? Because have you always been a runner? Like, did you do cross country growing up, or where did that kind of stem from?
Yeah, it's funny because I used to like absolutely hate running.
Okay, that's so funny.
Yeah, no, I literally hated it. Like it was terrible. I was always like I grew up doing sports. Like I did basketball, softball was actually like my main sport. My senior year of high school, my friends like they convinced me to do cross country. So I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just do it. And I really liked it. Like I loved running with people. And like feel like that's when I really was like, okay, I like running. It's
Yeah.
fun. But then when I went to college, I actually went for softball. So I was a
Yes,
softball
you
collegiate
were very
athlete.
like high level softball player, right? Like I remember seeing you post.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
You were a good softball player. You could hype yourself up. Like you weren't
I
just a
had I
softball
had
player.
very
Like
I
you're
had a
a
very good 4 years for sure. Um, it was great. I was a pitcher. Softball was like my passion. Like I was obsessed with it, and it really like took up all my time. And I remember like kind of like while I was in college, I would just kind of run on the side, like just for myself. And I just remember being like, I really just want to do a half marathon. Like that just
yeah.
sounds so badass. Like,
Oh my gosh.
and I like talked to some people and I was like talking to my parents about it. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm just going to sign up. And I remember like thinking like, there's no way, like it's 13.1 miles. I'll definitely have to walk at least some of it because
Yeah,
it's such
yeah,
a long race. Like,
yeah.
and it's just funny, like the mindset that I used to have versus like now I run marathons. I'm like, like,
Right. No, it's so funny because I was similar to that where it was kind of like on a whim, and I was like, you know what, running and me have like never been I was a sprinter like growing up in high school. Like I never ran more than a 200. I refused to do a 400 because I'm like that's a long distance to me. I'm like anything more than 30 seconds I'm out, like not doing it. Like I was like
right.
always using it as an excuse of like I'm not built to be a runner, and like I'm not like when you look at me it's not like oh she's a distance runner, because I think a lot of different builds like give off that like I look like a sprinter, like a stereotypical sprinter, but it's like so I think it blew my mind, one, when I was running the half marathon, to see like how many different shapes and sizes and ages of people run it. I was like, oh my gosh, like everyone's out here, all like ages and all, even just like fitness levels of people. Like it's so
Yeah.
vast. The variety of it was really like inspiring. And I was like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. And then I realized I could do it. And I was like, you were just so much more capable than you even think. And it's so funny because it really comes out of nowhere. I feel like the running, it was like so spontaneous in kind of similar situations. So I love that because it's
Yeah.
like
I think running is like it's just so mental.
it is. Oh my gosh, that's
It's such a mental like sport. And I think with all the other sports that I've ever played, it's very team oriented, like
yes,
softball, basketball, like it's not just you, it's you and your entire team.
yeah,
So running is just very individualized.
yeah,
But then, yeah, so then my senior year of college, after I did the half marathon, my roommate was like, oh my God, like you should do indoor track. And I was like, I don't really want to be like a two-sport college athlete. That's a lot.
Right.
Um, but like it was my senior year. I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. So
I love it. I love
I
it.
did indoor track, and then that's like really what sparked like my love for running.
Mhm.
I had a really good season. I was able to like advance pretty far. And then it wasn't really until after I graduated from college that I was like, this is like the one time in my life where like I'm not playing collegiate sports. Like I could actually train for a marathon. It was always like something like in the back of my head after I did the half. And then that's kind of what sparked the marathon training, and the rest is history.
Just fell in love. I love it. I kind of have a similar, like, I trained with a group growing up for track, and I feel like my coach and like the training atmosphere of like realizing how much of a sport it is, but also individually, like I fell
Yeah.
in love with it throughout that process too, of like kind of really devoting myself to it and realizing like what you can do and like accomplish when you actually like devote your time and your energy to training properly. Because before I never like committed to training more than like my practices in high school, it wasn't much more than that. But then I saw the times dropping and I saw like all of my accomplishments and it was like addicting almost. And it's like, whoa, like you really, really like opens your eyes to like what you put in is what you get out. And I think running is like a huge just like proof of that. But I love it. I love running. Like it's just I could talk about it all day. Like it's my favorite thing to talk about recently because I'm like it really has changed my life. And I'm sure yours as well and all of your clients. Like it's just such a different sport, I feel like. It's different than anything I've ever experienced, like compared to like lifting and compared to yeah, like you mentioned, like track or even like track, like you still are a team dynamic. So this is a little bit different. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely different.
it's unlike anything, and I think that's why I love it too, because it's so unique and not everyone understands it, but it's like when you talk to another runner, it's like, "Wait, you get it." It's like,
Yeah.
you finally,
Yeah.
like, don't sound crazy. It's like, "Okay," because a lot of people
I
just
know.
assume you're crazy for running, and I'm like, "No, just try it." I'm like, "Just try it. I promise you, like, you'll enjoy it." I'm like, "Get through the first little bit and, like, you'll fall in love with the process," and I've gotten so many people running, like, my brother, my friends, like, they're all running half marathons, and I'm like, "Really?" It's like, "You're
I know so many people I feel like are starting to like get into,
yeah,
I feel like
running." I
even
was
like
gonna
so many lifters that I've seen, they're all like, I'm training for a half now. I'm
I
like,
know,
oh
I
my
was gonna
God.
ask you about that. I'm like, have you noticed like a shift in like social
Yes.
media and people? Because like I feel like everyone's running, at least even just a little bit, like throughout the week to like supplement their training. They may not be a runner, but I'm like, I feel like everyone I know is like started running, which I think is so cool, just because it's really shed more light in that area. I think probably especially for you and
100%.
like coaching and stuff. I think that's so cool. But I feel like a lot of people like almost demonize running. And I feel like I talked to somebody else about this, but they were like growing up as an athlete, it was like running was kind of viewed as like a punishment. It was like if you mess up, you got laps,
Yeah.
and it was like you dreaded it, and it because it's hard. It's physically hard, mentally hard. And I think we never like glorified it really. It was like those few random people who enjoyed the distance running, but I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of those people too like grew up with the families that had like mom and dads who were doing like Ironmans or they would run marathons, like I grew up in a family nobody ran. So it was like completely
Yeah.
different and
Same.
new.
Same.
Yeah. So
Yeah. No, I think one thing too that's really cool about running is that it's very much performance based. Like I feel like before I got into running, I was definitely just a lifter. Like I love to lift. And that's kind of like where I started on social media. Like
yeah.
if you followed me from like the start, like I was just posting like my lift, never really a runner. Um, and I just think like training for performance, in my opinion, is just so much more rewarding versus like going into the gym like, oh, I want to get a snatched waist. I
Yeah.
want to get a
Yeah.
big butt. It's like those things to me just like are not as rewarding versus like I'm going to train for the Boston Marathon. I want to train to run this time. Like to me, that is just so much more rewarding. And then, I mean, I love lifting. Don't get me wrong. I love lifting, but I feel like I lift very intentionally
Yeah.
to help supplement my running.
Supplement your running. Yes.
It's not all about aesthetics.
Mhm.
And I feel like when you train for aesthetics, like you kind of, I feel like I hit the point, it's like, I'm just kind of over this. Like
Yes.
it's not fun. I'm
Mhm.
not really getting much out of it. And you never really feel accomplished, I guess.
No,
Um,
that is
so
literally
I
what
just,
happened to
that's what
me.
I love about running.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened to me with running was the fact that I was like feeling so burnt out and I was like, I need something different. I was like, I've never felt so unmotivated in the gym. I'm like, my life revolves around it, but I'm like, I am not seeing progress. My workouts are just blah. Like I go and I just go through the motions. And it was like, I knew I needed to train for something, and I was actually gonna do a bodybuilding competition, but I'm like, that's not me. Like, I'm not one.
Yeah,
I don't even track
not me
anything. I'm
either.
like, I don't want to stand on stage. Like, that's just, I don't have the passion for it. Some people do, and that's great. But I'm like, I need something else to work for. And I was like, what's the hardest thing I could possibly think of? And I was like, long distance running. Like, that's it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start with a half marathon. And people thought I was literally crazy because the day I decided to do it was my cardio day for the work, like my workout, like on my split. Cause I followed a very strict split too. And I was like so regimented on it. And I was like, I don't even want to. I mean, it was so cold. It was the dead of winter in Iowa. And I was like, I got to run on a treadmill. This is so stupid. I'm gonna just do sprints because I would do like sprint interval training on a treadmill. And I ran it. I had like the runner's high and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, okay, yep. I'm like, I need to start running more. And I was like, screw it. Like, this is it. And it was just kind of like an epiphany. And I was like, all right, I need to start doing this more. And it completely like shifted and changed everything. Like my content on, so like my job, and then also just like my motivation. And like you said, like it gives you like something, I think it's so rewarding, like you said, to like have something to work
So
for.
rewarding.
And it keeps you focused. I don't know. Your every other area in your life, I feel like also improves too, because you have to be so focused on your recovery and your sleep and what you're eating, and you have to like just take care of yourself in a whole nother level. And I feel like you said, it takes away from like the physique and doing it for those reasons rather than genuinely wanting to feel good and perform well, which I think
Yeah,
helps so many people. But
100%. There's
I
nothing like the runner's high.
there is nothing. I'm like, I have lifted for years. I've done hundreds and hundreds of workouts, and I'm like, nothing compares to like a runner's high. I'm like, I can't even describe it. I'm like, I'm just in a good mood too for the rest of the day. I'm like, if I have a good run, I'm gonna have a good day. I'm like, you can't have a
Yep.
bad day after like a good run. Even like the bad runs, it's like, damn, I did that. Like today, I had one of the hard. It was a whole thing, but I like had a really crappy run. I felt terrible, but I'm like, honestly though, it like I got through it, and I was like, and I still feel amazing because like I pushed myself to get through the run, and you feel accomplished because I'm like at the gym,
Right.
you can kind of like cut back and not really give it your all, but it's like when you're out there running, like you gotta keep like going, and then
Yeah.
you unlock just different things in your mind, and I'm gonna dive into that a little bit too about like mindset because like you said, it's so mental. Um, but I want to backtrack a bit first. And I just wanted to ask, like, what kind of led you to posting on social media and doing all of that? Because like you said, you were posting, I guess, originally like lifting content, but what kind of like sparked your interest? Because I know posting and starting a channel and like a platform is like scary, and like everyone kind of has
Yes.
their own story. So I'm curious what got you
Uh,
into social media.
yeah, no, it's so scary. I think so. I actually started my fitness account on Instagram my senior year of college. And, I just think like for me personally, I just changed so much. Like going into college versus coming out, I was just a
Yeah,
completely different person. Which even like stems with like starting my company. I came into college as a math ed major. I thought I wanted to be a math teacher.
that's crazy.
And like, yeah, for me, it was always just like, it was like the safe route, I
Hmm.
guess. I was like, I know I can graduate with this degree and I can get a steady job right out of college.
Yeah.
I'll have a job, I'll be able to pay the bills. I just think throughout college, like my mindset really shifted, like what am I passionate about? And I just felt like I wanted to give more.
Hmm.
Um, and that's also when, I just really developed a love for lifting and fitness. And I don't know, I wanted to share that passion with others. And I was like, I'm gonna start an Instagram.
I love it.
And that's what I did. And it really didn't start to take off until COVID.
Hmm.
When
Similar.
I feel like that's when a lot of the Instagram started to just kind of
Mhm.
explode. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how I got started though. And then once I did like indoor track in school, I was kind of documenting that as well. So like a little bit of running content. But it wasn't really until like I graduated from school that my content was like primarily running.
Running. Yeah. I love it. I love it. It is. It's crazy how like the timing of everything I feel like always works out like so perfectly. Like when you kind of needed to make that decision and that transition into what's my next move, like it kind of just all played out. I'm like, yeah, social media, it's crazy, but I feel like for everyone, it always hit right when they needed it. And I think that's the cool part about it. Um, and then I was gonna ask too, when did you start becoming like a coach for like a running coach? And was that something right away you knew you wanted to do, or how did that all kind of begin?
Yeah, so coaching is actually somewhat new for me. So I actually started coaching this past February.
Okay.
Um, so I feel like when I first started, like I never was like, I want to be a run coach. I
Mhm.
just think, I really developed a passion for running. And I think people were really interested in the way that I trained. I think one thing that's a little bit unique about me is that I'm very much like passionate about hybrid training. So a lot of run coaches out there, it's like, you're just going to run.
Yeah.
We're not going to practice any strength training. You just need to run more miles and that will make you better.
Mhm.
And I definitely disagree with that. I think for me, like it was always about quality over quantity.
Mhm.
And I really felt like my lifts were what got me to where I needed to be. And they really helped me get faster, get stronger, increase my endurance. And I think a lot of people were really interested in that. Oh, sorry. Am I on mute? No.
Oh, you're
Okay,
good.
sorry.
You're good. Yep.
And so I was like, I would love to help other people,
Mhm.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I know that so many of my followers are so interested in it. And I was like, how can I help? How can I help more people? And that's kind of when I decided that I wanted to start coaching.
I love it. I had a similar experience with like when I coached too. It was kind of like you realize you have like a passion and you have the knowledge and you want to be able to like help others. And it's really cool to be able to like do what you love and like also help people and like see them kind of fall in love with the process. It's like a really rewarding, fulfilling career, which I
So
think is so
rewarding.
awesome. But you're also a business owner. When did you decide to launch that and how did that kind of occur and happen?
Yeah. It's really crazy because like if I think back to when I was in college, I would have never guessed that I would be here right now.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, like I said, I thought I wanted to be a math teacher.
Mhm.
And I truly do love math. All through college, I loved my math courses. Like I really do love math.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't like my education courses much. And my mom was always like, oh, it's okay. Like just get through those. Like that's not how teaching really is, blah, blah, blah. And so you don't actually do your student teaching until your senior year of college.
Oh,
That's just like how it works. And so it's like a full on semester, like it's literally your full-time job. I was working 7 to 3, Monday through Friday, teaching every
oh
single course.
my
Um,
gosh. Oh my gosh. Every
and
course, not even just math.
well, so every math course that the teacher taught.
Oh,
So
right, right.
I was
Okay,
at a
yeah.
high school,
Yeah, you
yeah.
just
And
did
so
a
I was teaching
full
all the
time.
math courses that they were teaching. So I hated it. Like I absolutely hated it. I dreaded Mondays. I looked forward to Fridays. And it wasn't necessarily like the math or even the students. It wasn't like a discipline problem. It was just more that like for me, it's hard to like be so passionate about something and your students are just so not passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I have to be here because I need to graduate with this course.
Mhm, mhm.
And I really felt like I just felt like there was so much more in me that I wanted to do. And I just felt like that was limiting me so much. And I really had to sit down with myself and think like, okay, when I'm 40 years old, do I want to be teaching Monday through
Yeah,
Friday, the
yeah.
same courses like every single year? And I was just like, I don't think that I want that anymore. And I think in many ways, like I went with math. Both of my parents are teachers. My mom's a math teacher. It was just always something that I was like, oh, I see these other people doing it.
Yeah,
And I could see myself doing that. But I feel like at the time, I just didn't really know what else was out there.
right.
And so in terms of my company itself, I I mean, I always like I knew that it'd be so cool to start some sort of an activewear company. I would always, when I was like in the math center with all my math friends, I'd always like complain about my running problems. Like always saying how I was like so sick of my leggings falling down on my runs, or like
Yeah.
my leggings didn't have pockets, or the front seam was like so annoying, this and that, like the waistband was uncomfortable. And I literally would like tell my friends, like, I'm gonna start my own company so I can like just fix this
Solve all
problem.
your
I thought it was
problems.
like
Yeah.
so funny. And it's funny because some of them have like texted me since, like, oh my God, I can't believe you actually did
That's
it.
amazing. How so full circle, and it's like you really, like,
It was so
did
full
what you said.
circle.
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
Yeah. So after that semester, my senior year, I really had to like sit down. It was probably like honestly one of like the scariest times in my life because I was about to graduate with a degree that I just did not want to pursue. And like the thought of starting your own company is just like what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm one
Overwhelming,
person, like, I don't
scary.
know how to start a company. I'm not a business major. Like, I don't
Right. Yeah. I didn't
know.
even think you're completely right. Like I study business and it's scary for me. So I can't even
Yeah. I was like, I
imagine.
have no idea what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm a semester away from getting this degree. I'm going to get my degree.
Mhm.
But then I went back for a 1-year accelerated MBA program. So I actually have my master's in business administration.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so while I was back in school to do that, that is when, like, at nighttime, I was like starting my company. I was like
That's so cool.
researching, creating my logo, like deciding what I wanted the company to be about, this and that. And that's kind of like where all that sparked. I was learning how to design, I was learning how to use software. And so I kind of used that year to like start my company while I was in the MBA course. And then I launched my company the following January. So we launched January of 2022.
That is amazing. That's some hustle and some grind too. Like that is like being an accelerated MBA program in itself is like a huge commitment. Plus you're doing creating and researching and doing all of that, which is a huge commitment. Plus you're just a human being and you're training on your own. Like people need to understand like how much, but like that had to have been on your plate. But I feel like too, like mine was not to that extent, but I also had a season in my life where it was like so much was going on and I was hustling and I was studying, but then I was also researching and like prepping myself. And it's like people, I think it's a lot of people don't see that. Like, like I didn't know that story and that's like so amazing, but there's like so much hustle and grind, but it builds you and propels you and puts you into the position for like when you have the opportunity, like you could run with it. And boom, you
Right.
started a business and it's doing amazing, it looks like. And that's so exciting and so cool. I love it. I
Thank
love
you.
hearing those stories. It's like so inspiring too, to like anyone who's listening that has like those like ideas and those passions. It's like you just gotta commit to it and put like your heart and your time into it. But like you can make it work and it can happen and it can succeed. And that's so cool. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really just about, you really have to like jump in like 100%.
Yes.
Um, and I feel like in some ways I experienced that like with my social media. I'm sure you got to the point where it's like, okay, like I need to start treating this like my full-time job,
Oh yeah.
right?
That's exactly what I
You
felt
kind
like
of hit that point
college
where
was
it's like, this
winding
isn't just
down.
really a hobby
Yeah.
anymore. Like I could do something with this.
You
And
see an opportunity and it's
I
like
was starting.
you got to take advantage of that. But I think it's scary, like
Yeah.
you said, to like put all your eggs in one basket almost and be like, okay, like gonna devote myself to making this successful. But that's a part of business. And that's one thing you have to like high risk, high reward. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
it's scary. And there's so many unknowns in business, but I think there's so many parallels too. I've been learning between like training and being like an athlete and being like in the gym and also business. Like there's so many similarities. Like I think a lot of the mindset and like just traits that you have to have are aligned. And I'm like, that's why I think so many people that I'm friends with, like who are in the gym or training for something, are also successful in business. And I think that's a really cool
Yeah.
connection to make because it's so similar in so many levels. And that's a whole nother topic. I'm like, I could talk about that stuff
No, it
forever.
totally is.
But I wanted to ask, because we just to kind of wrap up all the questions about your business, I wanted to see if you had any just like tips on starting your own. I know we kind of briefed on that, but is there like one big tip that you would give to somebody who's kind of was like 5 years ago, or like sitting in like their math center and wanting to start something? Like what would be your biggest
Yeah.
tip?
I think one thing that's so big about starting your own company is you have to understand what your mission is. Like you really have to understand your story more than I think you need to.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you have to have your core values. Like,
Mhm.
and even today, I mean, I design every single product that we launch, and I always go back to like our core values. Like, is
Mhm.
this functional? Is this flattering? Is this comfortable? Like, is this made for runners?
Yeah.
And I think even just like the message behind your company, like you have to really understand, like, what am I trying to do here?
Mhm.
What do I want people to take away from my company? Because that's what makes you unique, right?
Exactly. That's
And
how you stand out. Right. Exactly. That's amazing.
100%.
Like what you're saying is gold. Like everyone
It's so
really needs
true. Like
to.
you really have to just understand, like, what am I trying to do here?
Mhm.
And it's funny because so many people, when I wanted to start my company, they were like, oh, like the apparel industry is such a saturated industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, like my simple answer is like the apparel industry is not a saturated industry for functional apparel for
Yes,
runners.
I
If it
completely
was, if
agree.
it
It's
was
like
a
you
great
find your
industry for
niche.
runners,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
You do. I'm just like, everyone is always like saying everything's oversaturated, but it's like, I think they're just finding excuses to not. It's like, you can find your
Exactly.
niche and you can find a problem to solve, like you did. Like you were like the draw, or like they fall down. They're like, there's not pockets. Like there are things to be like, everything can be improved upon. So it's like, you have to be smart enough though, and intelligent enough and creative enough to find those like outlets to like monetize on and like make your own. That, yeah, I just think sometimes when people say that, I'm like, it's just an excuse to me. I think there's a solution to everything. Like
100%.
nothing's too
100%. And I mean,
oversaturated.
if it was a solved problem, then why are people still complaining
Right.
about their leggings falling down when they
Yep.
run, or
Mhm.
the fact that everything has a front seam, or the fabric, or whatever it may be? So yeah, I think it's so important to understand, like, if someone were to come at you with like, why are you doing this? What's so special about your brand? Like, you need to know
Mhm.
the answer, and you need to
Yeah.
be passionate about it, and you need to really understand what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish.
I
And
love
I think that's honestly like the most important part, even before like all the legal work and,
that. Mhm.
all that stuff, like that's important. But if you don't have that like center core of your brand, like set
You
up,
don't have a
what
brand,
that
I feel
is.
like. Yeah. Like
I mean,
that's
that's
the
the whole
foundation
company.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Yes, that is really freaking good advice, you guys. Like anyone listening, that is, it couldn't be more true. I learned that like in business school and like through experience of my
Yeah.
own, and like seeing you, like it's facts. Like that's just
Yeah.
really, really good stuff. And then this is similar, but is there any like lessons that you've learned along the way that it's like, because I feel like a lot of times in business you have to fail and you have to learn. Like I think that's where I learned the most. Is there been anything that you just like weren't expecting and was like that was a huge lesson, but you grew so much from it and learned so much?
Yeah. I mean, every single day I'm learning
Mm-hmm.
something new.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so funny because with business, like I'm very math oriented, and I'm such a black and white person, just like math. That's why I love math. It's so
Yeah.
black. Like, this is my answer. This is my solution.
Yep.
And that could not be the case at all with business. And I think
No.
one thing that I've really learned is just like, number one, like you have to trust your gut, and you have to make hard decisions, like in a split decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, not, you have to get used to not having an answer to
Yeah.
everything. And that's something that I really struggled with. I'm such a like checklist, everything that's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen type of person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very structured. And I think with business, you really just have to, you have to kind of get over that, because there's so many problems that arise.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Oh,
every single day, there's a new problem, and you constantly have to be problem solving.
mm-hmm.
And, I always like to say, like in business, you always want to try to be 5 steps ahead. You
Mm-hmm.
always have to be 5 steps ahead.
Yes, you do.
But, you have to make decisions, and those decisions can be hard, but you kind of have to get used to rolling with the punches, because
Yep.
that's really the only way you're going to get by.
I know. You're saying everything I'm thinking. I'm like, I couldn't say it better. Like that's one thing too. I think as a business owner, you got to be confident too in your decisions. And it's like, you got to do it. And it's hard to do. And I think that's like the scariest part. Honestly, one of the scariest parts is because like you said, there's so much uncertainty, and that's what makes people uncomfortable. But it's like part of that is like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think again, that's like a parallel to running. It's like,
100%.
running is one of the most uncomfortable physically like forms of exercise ever.
Yeah.
So
It is.
I couldn't agree more. But with that, I kind of want to jump into talking more about running. We'll kind of wrap up with running. But I wanted to ask, so with training and running, I know like when I started, I honestly assumed running was just like a matter of going out and like running 3 miles and then 5 miles and then 8 miles or whatever. And like the more I've gotten into it, the more I've understood like the difference between like easy runs and long runs and like tempo runs and speed work and stuff. So I'm curious how you like what's a typical week of like training look like for you? Like even with like you said, like the lifting and like the hybrid approach to it. I'm just curious, like what's your day-to-day workouts for a week?
Yeah. So obviously, it depends on what you're training for. So that's key. Obviously, right now I'm training for California International Marathon. So
Oh my goodness.
my mileage is high for me.
Mhm.
Like I'm running like 64 miles this week.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah.
That is
Which
so
you'd
crazy.
be surprised is like actually pretty low for marathon training. Like, I mean, there are so many marathon runners, like they go like 80, 90 mile weeks, like consecutively. I'm like, I don't know how you guys do that.
mind blowing to me because
Yeah.
I'm like running like 15 miles and I'm like, my body's like, that's good. Like we're putting
Yeah.
in miles.
Oh yeah. Training load is high right now. But I mean, I think with any, running split, the key is number one, you want to keep your easy days easy. So I think what a lot of runners, even when I started, it's like they're always trying to like outdo their last run. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna try to make this run faster.
Mhm.
But what you end up doing is you end up training like in this gray zone where you're not actually building any aerobic fitness from that run because you're not training in your aerobic zone. So like, when we train, we have like different zones and it's essentially just what your heart rate is. And what a lot of people don't understand is actually where you build your aerobic fitness is in like your zone 1 and zone 2, which is like when your heart rate's at like 60 to 75% of your max heart rate. So you essentially want to try to keep your heart rate nice and low on your easy days. And that's actually going to help you build your aerobic base. So like a lot of times you'll see like run slow to run fast.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what they mean by that. And then obviously you don't want all your runs to be like that. So every single week I have some sort of a speed workout. And that's essentially like keeping your hard days hard. So that's when, I'm either training at threshold or above threshold. That's like, my very marathon specific workouts for whatever my goal pace may be for
Yeah.
the race. um, and then on top of that, so I'm also lifting. I lift currently 5 times a week. Um, I have 2 lower body workouts and then 3 upper body workouts per week. My lifts themselves, they're very running specific. So a lot of like unilateral exercises, when you run, you're going to have one side that probably compensates for the other. Chances are your running form is not perfect.
Yeah.
My running form is not perfect. So it's really important to make sure you're doing a lot of unilateral work.
Mhm.
And then obviously, sticking to like your compounds as well. And then every single week you want to have some sort of a long run. Those long runs are really what prepare you for race day, especially when, you're training for a distance race.
Yeah.
I know for me, like within my long runs, I'll have some sort of tempo work. So some sort of like either like tempo, mile, or whatever it may be. It's great to practice, race pace or faster
Mhm.
during your long runs when your legs are tired. So like for me, I just had like an 18-mile run. And like in your last couple miles, that's when I'll do like a mile tempos, because you want to practice on tired legs. And yeah, and then once you go to taper, your 2-week
Uh,
taper, that's when like your body just starts to feel amazing. If you can hit those paces during your big training weeks when your legs are already tired, then
yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, well now I know that for my race I'll be able to hit those paces
Yeah.
with no problem.
I'm like absorbing all of this. I'm like mental note, mental note. I
I
love
know,
it.
I'm sorry, I just spewed so much at
No,
you.
I love it. Like I'm totally following and it's making so much sense because like I hear and I see like you do and other like I'm fully like on running talk and I'm like I
Love
follow
that.
so big runner. Like it's so funny how my like approach to like all of that has changed and I'm just so like it's so new to me and it's one area of fitness that I'm not an expert in and I'm not very like I'm so new to it. So I'm like upset because I'm a trainer. So like I understand the like how to the process of like building and training for something, but like running is so new to me that I love it. Like that makes so
Yes.
much sense. And it's such a process and it's so technical. And it's like people, I feel like previous to me, like, literally a couple months ago, like I didn't even realize that, like training for my first half marathon, I just started kind of running and I was like, I'll figure it out. And like I didn't really follow a program and I just built a base endurance. But I'm like now going into like my second half marathon and possibly a third and like I'm getting more into it. I'm like, I actually want to start training correctly and like
Yeah.
applying things like that. And it makes it more fun too. And obviously is more beneficial and it's just a smarter route to go. So I think
Yeah.
that's so cool. You do a lot. Like 5, that's impressive. Like 5 lifts with all your running. Like that's crazy, but I love it. And it's like I said, like you have to be willing to like sacrifice all that time and like put in the work and the commitment to it to like be as successful as you are. Like you're not just a runner, girl. You ran like a sub 3 hour. I was like, I remember that day and I opened Instagram. I was like, She did it. I'm like, that like chills. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then
Oh, God.
I literally, because then you posted your playlist, your like training playlist with like guitar
Yes.
music, and I started running to it, and that's literally like my running music now. So just saying
Oh
that
my God, I
your
love that.
playlist.
I need to make my playlist for California.
Please do, because I'll be
I'll
listening
share it
to
with you
it.
when I do.
Yes, it's so good. But that's so funny. And I was gonna ask, so do you listen to music on all your runs, or do you ever listen to podcasts, or do you like go no music ever?
Um, I usually always listen to music. I've never really gotten like into listening to podcasts on my
Yeah,
runs. I can see myself like listening to them probably like during an easy run. I've done it a couple times. I don't know. I just feel like I've always been such a music girl.
me too.
I think it's funny because like when I run, not like my race day playlist, but like my regular playlist, it's like super slow, like country music. And people are like, I don't know how you run to
I
that.
love it. Like I was listening to it and like I love it.
Yes, I'm just like, I don't know. I love like the slower country music. I'm just like, I'm just in a
It
good
almost
groove
like
now.
relaxes you a bit, you know? It's like you're not
Yes.
overstimulated and like overwhelmed almost. Cause I think like you said, and we've said so many times, like running is so mental. So it's like sometimes when I have things like
Mental.
screaming in my head, I'm like almost like screaming at myself. And then I'm like, I just get so like uptight and like my heart rate starts like spiking and stuff. So it's like I like
Yes.
relaxing because it kind of relaxes you into the run a little bit, at
It
least.
does. It
Yeah.
does. But yeah, I'm a huge, I've never ever raced without music, which people are like, what? Is that even allowed? Like, yes, it's allowed.
You know, I couldn't
You
go
can
without
race
it.
with
There's
music.
no way. Like, there's
Um,
literally no way I could do it. Like, hearing myself breathe, I'm like, I need to not hear that. Like, I hate, like, I
yeah,
get more tired. I'm like, I like the distraction of the music. It helps a
100%.
lot. And then with that, I wanted to ask, like, I guess, how do you like mentally like get through runs? Because like it's hard. Like mental, like running is so mental, and there's points where it's like it's you and you. Like that's I think the one thing about running is like there's no one else out there with unless you run with like a partner. But typically when you're training, it's like you and you, and it's there's solo runs, and it's so much I've learned so much about myself as I become a runner because it's so much just like you're unplugged from the world, and it's like you versus you got to like convince yourself to keep going, you got to convince yourself to push, you got to convince yourself you're not hurting as bad. Like what do you kind of
Yeah.
like tell yourself? Do you have any like kind of go to like reminders, or how do you get through like those really hard points in like a race or a workout?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing, the more you do it, the more
Mhm.
comfortable you get. I feel like for me, discomfort has just become so like I'm so used to it
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
sometimes I'm like I crave that discomfort. Like
Yeah.
I love my speed workouts. I love pushing my body to like limits that I'm like, can I hit these paces
Yeah.
today? Like I don't know. I just think the more that you do it, the more you kind of fall in love with pushing yourself to that limit.
Yes.
But I think, sometimes I'll remind myself. One thing I always like to remind myself is like, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
I say that too. I say that
Yeah.
too. In
It's
like
so it's
everything
so
in life
true.
too. Yeah, it is. Like it's mhm.
It's like, if it was easy, everyone would be training for marathons.
Right.
It's not easy.
No, that's like the 1% of people even do it. Like it's
Yeah,
so like I
exactly.
feel like too as a runner, like you forget that. And I saw a TikTok, I think it was literally yesterday about running, and it was like, what did it say? But it was something about being a runner and like how you become a runner, and something about it was like talking about how pretty much like no one is a runner. Like it's so rare that
Yeah,
like you meet people who actually go out and run. Like it's literally like 1% of the people I know are like into running, but like the more you get into it, you meet more people, so it seems more normal. But
right.
like an outsider perspective, like especially as a competitive runner like you and a marathoner, like it's such a small niche, and that's like really cool that you can like tap into that, like you said, and just understand that like I'm doing it because one, you like want to and you have that passion, but it's like it's not meant to be easy. Like you said, like it's meant to be
No.
hard. So you have to understand that. And everything in life, I feel like that's worth having is hard to come by. Like that's what makes it worth it. So yeah, I know I love that because it's
Yeah.
like so true in like business too. Like I like the
A
correlation
hundred
is
percent, a hundred
so
percent. I
insane.
think I think one thing too that I always have to like remind myself, and the same thing with my business, is like you have to allow yourself to try. And
Yes.
that was one thing that I really said to myself going into Boston. I was trying to run a sub 3 hour marathon,
Hmm.
and I knew it was going to be a push. Like
Hmm.
I really truly didn't know if I could do it going into race day. And I was very scared to like share my goal. I mean, obviously, with
Yeah.
social media,
Yeah.
you know, people are always asking like, oh, what's your time goal? What's this and that? And,
Mhm.
you know, the thought of running a 650 mile for 26 miles was just like
Crazy.
very scary. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do this. Like,
Yeah.
and I just think like on race day, it's like, you have to allow yourself to at least try. Like you
I love
have
that.
to let yourself try. And I think like even just doing Boston for me was like such a pivoting point for me mentally. Like I truly was like, okay, you know, if I can do this, like what else can I do? You know? And
Yes.
I think
That gave me
you
chills. I
really,
literally just got like full body
yes,
chills.
sometimes it's like you have to prove yourself wrong.
Mhm.
And I really just had to like on race day, I just had to like let myself try. I had to let myself try. And like the worst thing that happens is you don't hit your time goal.
Yeah. You
Like
learn from it.
whatever.
Next time you do what you need to do to like get to that
Yeah,
next goal too. Like you have to be willing to fail and accept that like
exactly.
that's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was my first half marathon, nothing compared to running a Boston, but it's like I had that similar mindset of like just do it. And like because my goal, I didn't have a time goal, I didn't have a pace goal. Like I really didn't even understand running, but I was like my one goal was just to consistently run the whole thing. I was like I just want to see if I can run it without stopping and just like prove to myself that I can do it because I before I started training, girl, I couldn't run more than a mile and a half. Like I literally couldn't. And so I was like, it was I ran that and it unlocked it for me too. I was like, what else can I
Yes.
do? And I'm like, do I want to train for a try? Do I want to do a full marathon? And now that's like kind of in the back of my mind. Everyone's like, when's the full marathon coming? I'm like, oh, we'll see. Like, let me get through another half or two. Because like that was still to this day, like one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it wasn't even the day of the race. It was the whole journey, I think,
Oh
leading up
yeah.
to the run. And I'm like, that's I think like it's all about the journey. And I think that's where you find the most enjoyment in it. And you learn and you grow and you just that's the part that I love about running. And like the race day, like I finished it like I ran like a slow pace. It's not like it wasn't the feeling that I think people think that that's why you do it. You know, like
Yeah.
it's a really cool accomplishment, but it's like I was more proud of the weeks before that I ran when I didn't want to run. I went out in the snow and the ice, and you understand that you're from New
Oh
Hampshire
yeah.
originally. Like I've
Oh
seen your
yeah.
cold runs, and I'm like, oh my god, but I get it, girl. Like I trained in
Terrible.
Iowa, and we're like, how? But it's like you dive so deep into that like dedication and that discipline, and I think that's where at least my love for running came from. I'm like, it's not even the fact of like running a race and like play. Like, I don't think I'll ever be competitive like you. Like, that's not where I find, I guess, maybe one day, I don't know. I'm not, I guess I shouldn't say never, but like, I just find so much joy in like the process and like how much I've grown as a person. Cause I'm like, you realize like what's next. And I think it kind of like bleeds into every other aspect of your life. It's like, okay, if I can do this, what else can I do in business, on social media? Like, how hard can I push? Because your mind can be so limiting. It's so limiting. And
It
I'm like,
is. It
running
really is.
proves that what you tell yourself, your body like responds to. Like you have to like convince yourself
100%.
you're not like I had to be like, Chloe, you're not actually tired, you're not actually hurting, or I'll be like, this is fueling you for like the next time you're in pain. I'm like, it'll be a little easier because you're pushing yourself right now. I'm like, just keep going. So
Right.
I don't
No,
know.
it's true. I think it's all about the journey. I mean,
Mhm.
I look back at, you know, the Boston Marathon, like
Yeah,
I mean, race day was incredible. Don't
yeah,
get me wrong,
yeah.
but I think for me, it's like the things that I remember are the 22 in a blizzard when I lost power. Like those are the things that you remember from your
Yes.
training.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily race day. I mean, I think for me, race day was super memorable just because
Yeah.
like I
Oh,
felt like all of that
yeah.
training had paid
Mm-hmm.
off for that
Mm-hmm.
one day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, it's not just about race day. You know, it's about the entire process. And I think that's why many people when they do a half, they just become addicted and they want to
They
keep doing
do.
it.
It's like what's the gateway drug of like
Yes,
running. It's like you get a little taste and it's like you're literally hooked because it's
you're
a journey.
addicted.
Like you can't just I mean, maybe it's like a rare few people could just up and run, but it's like most people can't just up and run 13 miles straight. Like that's
No.
you got to put in the time and the effort. And it's I think that's why it's so rewarding because it's like it's proof that you worked hard to get here. And it's like even when I'm out running or like you're at the race, like the environment is just like it's unlike anything else, you know, it's like, you
So
know,
fun.
everyone you're looking at has been like grinding and working their butt off for like how many weeks and months and like doing everything. And it's just really like inspiring to see. And it's like so cool. Like, I don't know. The race day is like so fun. And I'm like, and I'm not even competitively doing it. And I was like, this is amazing. And I never experienced anything like that before. So that's, yeah, it is. That's like one of the like huge perks, I guess, is just like being
Yeah.
able to like connect with those people. Cause I'm like, it's just a really like
It is. It's a really
exciting
cool thing.
time.
It's so
Yeah.
cool to just like be surrounded by
Yeah.
so many like-minded people on race day.
I would
It's
love
just
to even
so
just go
fun.
observe like the Boston, you know, like watch because like
Yeah.
now like it would be like so unreal to like see as like I kind of have a little more of like an idea and a taste of that. Like I just can't even imagine
Yeah.
the like energy there
No,
and all of that. It would just be amazing. That's so cool.
it's a wild day. The Boston Marathon it's very cool. It's a really
Yeah.
fun race.
That's a yeah. I literally I remember like you posting about it and I was like like refreshing. I was like everything, the stories, the videos. I was eating it
Aw.
up. I'm like, this is so awesome. So cool.
Yeah.
And then what else did I want to ask you? I feel like I have so many little things, but mentally, yeah. So you just pretty much what do you like have conversations with yourself when you're running? Like are you like talking to yourself about your pace and like your
Oh.
fatigueness and all of that? Like what kind of like goes through your head?
Yeah. I mean, I do have like mental conversations with myself.
Yeah, like you just have to convince
Um,
yourself like you're not tired. Like how do you
I don't know. Sometimes it's like I feel like I just kind of go into like a
Yeah.
daze. Other times, I just like to try to like center myself. I
Mhm,
think like when you're trying to run like at a certain pace, it's like,
mhm,
all right, a lot of times I'll be like just nice and loose, like how easy can I make this feel? I
mhm,
like to always say that to myself, like how easy can I make this pace feel?
mhm.
I always remind myself to smile. I think like I swear to God, like every time you smile when you're running, you like instantly like just kind of calm down. Like I'll be doing my speed workouts and I like am like
Oh my
I'm like
gosh, I
intentionally
love it.
smiling.
I believe that though, because like I'll be running on like a trail. There's a trail here in Tempe, and there'll be like cute little couples outside, and like I make an effort to be like, good morning, like on my run, even if I'm like tired and don't want to talk, I'll like smile at like I speak and I say good morning to like the older people, but like the younger people, I'm like scared. So I just
Yeah.
smile though, and even after that, I do get like a rush of like a surge,
Yeah.
second wind almost. And so I totally believe I need to start doing that. I'm smiling more when I'm just alone. When I'm with
Yes.
me, and be like, I'm tired. This is so
No,
fun.
it really does work. Like when when you're in the pain cave, I
Yeah.
feel like that definitely helps. And I don't know. I think I also like to say pain is temporary. That's a big
Mhm.
one that I always say. And it's so true. And I think like too, like in the back of my head, I'm always like I have to give this everything that I have, especially in a race.
Mhm.
Like I remember with Boston, I mean I broke 3 hours by 4 seconds. So
Yeah.
we
We're
were playing it pretty close to the cutoff. And like I remember when I turned left onto Boylston, which is like that final
Mhm.
stretch, like I could see the finish line and like I looked down at my watch and I mean the finish line's pretty far from when
Yeah.
you turn. It's actually like a lot farther than I think you think it is.
Yeah.
But I had like a minute and 30 seconds left and I just remember saying to myself like I'm never ever gonna forgive myself if I don't at least like just give it everything that I have in this final stretch. And like that's just when I like sprinted to the
Oh my
end.
gosh, literally
And
shows like full
like
body.
I literally went like numb from like the waist
Oh, I bet.
down.
Like just
I was just like, I have to do this. Like, I'm never gonna forgive myself. Like, I've come this far. Like,
Mhm.
I have to just give it everything that I had. And at that time, I didn't really know if like how much time I really had,
Yeah.
like if I was gonna make it in time. So
Right.
thank
At
God
that
I
point, like
did
you can't
sprint.
control. So it's like you're gonna control what you can, and that was giving it your all, and you did.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just, I think in those moments,
Mhm.
you just have to, I don't know, kind of remind yourself of that. Like,
Yeah.
do I want to leave it all out here or do I want to play it safe?
Play it safe. Yeah. And it's much easier said than done too. Like to take that courage of being like, I mean, you've been running at a freaking fast pace for
Mm.
hours already. Like your body is like on the edge of like giving out. And then it's like you got to give it 100%, 150% at this point. So like that's like next level of like that. And that's where you have to like rely on your body to just take over and like all those hours and all those like hard workouts and everything. It's like you just got to trust almost in your training and yourself and just be like, okay, body, like do your thing. Cause that's when you have to mentally almost tap out and just be like, you can't think of, I'm sure you probably had really like no thoughts, but like everything at the same time. Like that was probably
Yeah.
the craziest 90 seconds of your life. I can't even
Oh yeah.
imagine, but like,
Yeah. I think though, like the speed work, like your hard workouts in prep, like I always like to say that, like, you know, when you're hurting, it's like, okay, I've been prepared for this. Like,
Yes.
this is what those speed workouts prepared me for. Like, I'm ready for this pain.
Yes.
Um, and I think, you know, if you train right,
Mhm.
you know, like a marathon, like it's not supposed to be painful the whole time. Like I think
Right.
people think it is, but you know, it's not. It's just long and it's going to be painful towards the end, obviously. But you know, if you train properly, you should feel pretty freaking good for like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first 15 miles.
Yeah. No, I agree. Similarly with like how I felt in my half too. Like the first like
Yeah, it's very
8
similar.
to 9, I was like, "Mom," like they like, like go to like the different points and they cheer you on. And I was like, I feel like oddly really, really good. And like I was
Yeah.
running like a similar pace that I trained at. So like I knew I could like withstand that. And I was like, this is crazy. And then it got harder between like 9 to 11. Like that's when like it kind of sets in and you're like uncomfortable. But then again, it's like that's when I guess I just tapped in and I was like, I want this bad enough. Like I'm not gonna stop no matter what. Kind of like this is the promise I made to myself. So I was like, I'm gonna give it my all. And like if I fall over and my feet give out, then like I'll stop. Like I'm not gonna like actively
Right.
choose to like stop and walk. And so I get that. Like mine is, half of that, but I totally like that would be where my training would be at. Like the first 15 is like enjoyable. It's like you're run and you're just, yeah, you're training for it. Like that's the norm. But that's so crazy. It may literally hearing you talk about it is making me want to like train for a full marathon, but I'm like, it's the only thing that's
You
holding me back is
should.
like a fear. Like I don't know why I wouldn't. Like there's no reason to not. Like I have like the time and I have like the commitment. I'm like, I think it would be really cool.
One thing that I will say, like that I think people don't really realize is like marathon training is really not much different than half marathon training at all. It's just all I like to say to people is it's just longer. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like the long runs are obviously going to be longer. But again, like you're building up to that. So
Yeah.
it's not like,
Right.
I mean, when you start off, like
Mhm.
you're running the same distances that you ran for your half marathon
Yeah.
training. And
Yeah.
even when you're marathon training, you know, like your recovery day, it's still going to be like a 5 mile run. You know, it's not really much different than a half, which I think a lot of people are shocked at. Like I
No,
had
but
this one client
yeah.
and she was like so scared to do a marathon. And I was like, you know, I think you could do one. Like, she's like, oh, like I just blah, blah, blah. So I finally convinced her to do it.
Mhm.
And she did it. She had an insane race. And she was like, honestly, like, I'm just so shocked at how much I enjoyed the training. Like, she just thought that it would be like the most
Yeah.
demanding thing on her body. And it's not. Like, it's really
Just like
not
a
if you train
process.
right.
Like, yeah, you said you build like throughout my half train, it was just one more mile. And you just kind of consistently have to like, it's not, yeah, you don't go from running 10 miles to having to run 20 miles the next week. Like it's a
No, not at all.
progressive process. So yeah. Mhm.
I
Girl,
think you
maybe
can
you
do it,
should tell
girl.
me like, oh, I wanted to do it. And like right now is a good time because it's finally cooling off in Arizona, running in the heat. Like, how has that been for you? Like that
Oh,
transition
God.
from like running in the cold to Florida, that's like so hot and humid. Like
Oh my God. Yeah.
I
It,
was I was unwell for like the first month and a half. I was like, the heat is so hard to run in for me. Like,
yeah. It was definitely an adjustment for
Mhm.
sure. But in my opinion, I'm like, I love it. I'm like, I
Like
love
it.
the mental challenge. And I
Yeah.
really feel like I have gained so much from training in this heat, like mentally.
Mhm.
And I know on race day in Cali, like, you know, the
Yeah.
weather's typically not hot at all. Like, I'm
No.
going to feel so great. I'm going to be flying because I'm
Mhm.
just so used to training here.
Yes.
Even this morning, it was like 65 degrees, which maybe doesn't seem cold,
No,
but
but
like,
today in Arizona, it was 55 and I was freezing. I was like,
yes.
oh my God, like this is crazy, but you feel so much better. I was like,
Yeah, I was like, wow, like my
mhm,
fitness has really done wonders because like this feels like nothing.
mhm, mhm,
And I even noticed that like I did the Boulderthon half marathon, which
mhm.
is in Colorado at altitude. And I was
Wow.
so scared to race at altitude. It's like, I'm gonna die, I'm not gonna be able to breathe, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And I will say, like, it was not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. And I truly think that's because I've been training in the heat. I genuinely feel like running in the heat is harder than running at altitude.
I believe it. I've never really ran in altitude, but like I understand like the difficulty and the difference between the heat and the cold. Like the first time I started running, it was last winter, and I was actually here in Arizona for like 2 weeks, and I was running, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like why are these runs so hard? And then I went home back in Iowa in the middle of January, and I went on a run. I'm like, that was the best I've ever felt. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, you just have to like learn to take advantage of like those hard times. Like I love your perspective on that, because most people be like, it's like, that's kind of what I was like at first. I was like, it's hot, like I hate it, like I'll train in the winter, but it's like, wait, I can use that to my advantage and like strengthen
Oh
myself
yeah.
so much using the heat and like putting myself through like a harder run. And then
Mhm.
it's easier in the cooler. Yeah, I love that mind. That's the mindset of a runner though. Like you have to like have that like understanding, that perspective on things, because it's just I'm like, they're built different. I literally made a TikTok this morning and I'm like, runners are like built mentally different. I'm like, the process and the things that you like understand and unlock it's such a healthy, like mental thing to do. Like it's so therapeutic, and it literally will like, that's what I'm saying. It changes your life in so many other areas rather than just like your physical. Like people are like
Yes.
asking me, they're like, are you running to like lean out? I'm like, no. I'm like, that's
No.
I'm like, it is more cardio, but I'm like, people don't understand. I'm like, if that's your goal, you're not gonna last. Like you're not gonna make it to race day. Like you're gonna give up, because it's like, one, when you're training, you have to eat more, you have to fuel properly. I'm sure like are you there? Do you track anything, or do you eat intuitively, or how do you go like with your approach to nutrition, I guess, like training for a marathon and stuff? Because I'm sure you got to be pretty strategic about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't really track anymore. Like I've tracked before.
Mhm.
I think you have to find what works for you,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
I just know like for me, right now, carbs are my best friend.
Mhm. I'm sure.
Um, like literally my entire diet is carbs. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think like honestly, running has improved my relationship with food and with my body so much
I
because
completely agree.
yeah, it's like I'm not like eating to like, oh, I gotta hit my protein goal or like because like I need to like grow my glutes. Like,
Mhm.
no, I'm like eating this so that I'm freaking ready to go for my
Fueled.
runs.
Yes.
And I mean, like, even when like running Boston, like when when you're tapering and when you're carb loading, it's like, yeah, like I'm eating a ton of carbs right now. Do I necessarily like look amazing? Like, no.
Yeah.
But am I about to run a great race because I'm properly fueled? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like when you just kind of learn to like put your looks aside and just say like, I want to try to run my best race. How can I get there?
Mm-hmm.
I think that really just helped me improve my relationship with myself. It's made me
Yes.
more confident and just my relationship with food in general.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And like similarly, that's like what I'm like, if that's your goal physique wise to start running, I'm like, it's not gonna
Yeah.
last, because it's like it will hopefully help those people who I guess maybe necessarily are doing it for that reason, because you'll learn quickly like that can't be the reason. Like it's not gonna work.
Right.
You gotta properly fuel, and you're an athlete. So it's like that's like the most important like part of it. Like what you
Yeah.
eat makes such an impact. And it motivates me to like eat way like better just in general though. It's like you don't gravitate towards the crappy food because it's like that is not going to make me feel great on my run. Like that goes through my head. I'm like, no. But I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to eat the carbs and keep fueling and make sure I'm getting in like calories and meals and all of that. So yeah, I'm glad that's a similar. I'm like, I had a feeling that like every runner kind of had that, but I'm like, you worded it in a really good way. So I hope a lot of people can like hear that and understand that. And then I just want to ask one more question.
Sure.
But what like inspires you and keeps you motivated while training and running? Like what is like your kind of your why?
Oh God. I feel like I have a lot of whys, but I think, for me personally, I just like I want to be the best version of myself.
Mhm.
And like for me, I feel like I just wake up every day and I'm like, okay, like how can I get better today? Right?
Yeah.
Like how can I get better? How can I improve myself?
Mhm.
And I think, once you start running too, it's constantly, it's very mental and it's like let me prove myself wrong. Like let me prove to myself that I can do this.
Mhm.
I can do big things and
Yeah.
like yeah, I'm never going to be as good as like I'm never going to be like an Olympic qualifier or whatever. But like I can be the best version of me.
Of you.
Um,
Right.
and I feel like that just like motivates me every single day. I think having goals like time goals and just race goals, that's
Yeah.
obviously motivating in itself, but I just think waking up and just wanting to be better every single day for myself, for, my relationships, my
Yeah.
company, the
Mhm.
people in my life, I think that's like what really motivates me.
I love it. That's a great motivator. Like it's so, like it's so constant, like that's something every single day forever that you can like rely on to keep you like inspired and motivated. And yeah, Love it. And then the last two things I always ask guests before we end is there like a quote that you live by? Like mine's like, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. Like that's like my go-to quote. Do you have like a quote that you
I feel like, again, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
ever,
I really
yeah,
like that one. I think
yep,
that's
yep.
like, that's one of my favorite ones.
And then are there any products like as a runner that you like couldn't live without? Like is there something that like changed the game and you're like, I don't know how I ever went without?
Yes. I think one, a watch, like a
Mhm,
running watch,
mhm.
like it's just so much better. Like having a watch that has a good GPS
Mhm.
that lasts long and that just can at least track your runs and your heart rate, especially,
Yeah.
really helps so much. And then I think also investing in a good pair of running shoes. You know,
Yes.
when you run, obviously it's an investment. You're investing in your health, but so many people like they'll get injured because they go and buy not running shoes and then
Yeah.
try to run like a ton of miles in them. And like take the time, go get fitted, or find a shoe that works for you. People always ask me like what shoes I like, and I'm more than willing to yeah, I wear these shoes, but again, not everyone's foot is the
Yeah.
same. So like
Yeah.
find a shoe that works for you. And if you don't know, go to a running store and get fitted for a
Yes.
shoe. And I
I
promise
did. I was running in Hoka's because
it's such
everyone
a
was
difference.
running in the Bondi A's. And I was like, I literally lost toenails. I was getting blisters. I'm like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And I went got fitted and I found a pair of Asics and I'm like, I can never run
You're
anything
an
else.
Asics girl.
Yes, I am. Like,
Me
love
too.
shoes so much. But yeah, people ask me and I'm like, this is what works for me. But I'm like, we're completely like, I'm like, just
Yeah.
go get fitted. Cause I'm like, it's gonna be so different. I don't know what's gonna work for you. So
Yeah, everyone has like a very, different shape. Everyone has a different stride.
yes, yeah, they look at every little thing. And this
Yeah,
man was watching me run and I was like, I don't know. You tell me, I guess.
yeah. But I think that's so important just because it will make the journey so much better. Like
Yes.
running's fun, but when you're like losing toenails and you're
Yeah.
constantly injured, that's not fun.
Yeah,
So,
no.
if you can try to not have those things happen,
Yep.
that's key.
Yes. Well, thank you so, so much. This was amazing. I feel like we could
Absolutely.
have talked forever. I could just keep asking you questions.
No.
I'm loving it. But you had so much good insight on business and running and just
Yeah.
I loved it all. If you wanna, what's your like Instagram, plug all your socials so people can find you. I'll link it below in the show notes, but
Yes. My Instagram and TikTok is Caitlyn Miller _fit. And then my activewear company is called Exponential Athletics. It's EXPNTL _athletics.
you guys, the
Yeah,
running shorts with the pockets are like a game changer. Like a game changer.
they are.
Take
They
it from me.
are.
They really, really are. So yes, go check
We
all
have,
that
we have some
out.
fun stuff coming up soon.
Woo!
So get
I'm
ready.
excited. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you so, so much. This was amazing.
Thanks
And
for having
everyone, thank you
me.
for listening and we will chat later.